The first night I sat on a porch in Holmes County after the sun went down in July, I counted bites on one arm and stopped counting at 23. That was the summer I was 9 years old. My mother did not reach for a can. She reached for a tin pail. $4. Hold on to that number because by the end of this, you will understand exactly where it went and why it was the last money I ever spent on a mosquito in my life. Stay with me to the end because I am going to give you the exact ratio my mother used, written on the inside cover of a feed catalogue she kept for 41 years. And I have never once seen it printed in a single gardening book. Tell me in the comments how many mosquito bites you already have today, right now, while you are watching this. Just the number. I read every single one, and last year somebody told me 47, and I believed them. You have probably bought the spray. The kind in the orange can, or the kind in the blue can, or the kind your neighbour swears by. You spray the yard on a Friday, so you can sit outside on Saturday, and by Wednesday, the mosquitoes are back like nothing happened. You have done this every summer for years. You have never once asked yourself why a product that is supposed to solve a problem needs to be bought again every single week of the season. Here is the part nobody tells you. A mosquito does not live very long. Most of them are dead within 2 weeks of hatching. So if a spray actually broke the cycle, you would only need to use it once or twice a season, not every Friday from May through September. There is no money in a product you buy twice a year. There is a great deal of money in a product you buy every week for 5 months. So the products you are sold are built to kill the mosquitoes flying around today and do absolutely nothing about the ones that will hatch out of your gutter on Tuesday. Same can, same smell, same yard, and somehow you are still losing ground every July. Think about how the can is actually marketed to you. It promises a yard you can sit in, and it delivers that for a day, maybe 2, and then quietly stops working, and nobody at the company is under any obligation to tell you why. You assume the bugs simply came back, the way weather comes back. You do not assume that the can was only ever designed to handle the adults already in flight, because that assumption would lead you to ask why nothing in that can ever touches the water where the next generation is sitting and waiting. That single question, asked honestly, is the one the entire industry would rather you never ask out loud. And here is where it gets interesting. The chemical companies are not lying to you about what is in the can. They are simply not telling you what is not in the can, which is anything that touches the water where the eggs are sitting. 90% of the mosquitoes that bother you in your own yard hatched within 300 feet of where you are standing. Not from the neighbour's pond, not from the creek down the road, from a clogged gutter, an upturned wheelbarrow, a bird bath nobody emptied since the spring. You can spray the air 100 times and the eggs do not care, because you never touched the water. There was a woman in our church district named Ruth, older than my mother, who kept goats and a garden that fed 11 people. I drove 3 hours back to that county 2 years ago just to sit on her porch again and ask her to walk me through it one more time before I wrote any of it down, because I did not trust my own memory of something I had not done myself since I was a teenager. She still had the same tin pail. She still walked the property every single morning before the coffee was even poured. And she did it for one reason only, which was water. Not flowers, not weeds. Water that was sitting still for more than 4 days. I stood in her yard and watched her tip over 3 things in under 2 minutes. A bucket behind the shed. A wheelbarrow with 2 inches of rainwater sitting in the bottom. A child's toy left out from the week before. She did not spray a single leaf of that garden the entire time I was there. And her grandchildren played in that yard barefoot until dark. Ruth's place was not large. A garden, a goat pen, a clothesline, and a porch with 2 chairs that had been repaired so many times, my mother used to joke they were held together by faith alone. What struck me, standing there as a grown woman instead of a child, was how little effort the whole thing actually took, once it became a habit instead of a chore. She was not out there for an hour with a sprayer strapped to her back, soaked in chemical, breathing through a mask. She walked for maybe 10 minutes, tipped over what needed tipping, and went back inside to start breakfast. The entire defense of that yard cost her almost nothing in time, and absolutely nothing in money. And it had been that way for as long as she could remember, long before she had grandchildren of her own. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because Ruth would want me to be honest about it too. None of what I am about to describe kills a mosquito that flies in from 3 streets over on a windy evening. Nothing does that. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. What this does is stop your own yard from manufacturing them in the first place. And that is the part the can in the store cannot do, because the can was never built to. We didn't call it a method. It was just how it was done. Every morning, before anything else, you walk the property with your eyes open for standing water. Not a chore you write on a list, a habit, the same as locking a door. The first thing is the water itself, and this is the part that takes discipline, not money. Anything that holds water for longer than 4 days becomes a nursery. A clogged gutter is the worst offender in most yards, and almost nobody checks it until autumn. Empty it or screen it, and you have already removed the single largest source on most properties. A bird bath needs to be dumped and refilled every 3 days, not topped off. A rain barrel needs a fine screen across the top, tight enough that nothing the size of a sesame seed can slip through, because that is roughly the size of the egg you are trying to keep out. The second thing is the planting, and this is where the garden does work, the spray cannot. Citronella grass planted in large pots near the porch steps does something real, though it is modest, and I will not pretend it is a wall. What does more work is rubbing the crushed leaves of certain plants directly on skin and clothing before you sit outside, the way my mother did with lemon balm and with the leaves of a marigold variety she grew along the garden border every single year, without exception. Crush a handful between your palms until your hands smell like the plant itself. Then rub it along your wrists, your ankles, behind your ears. It is not invisible the way a spray is. You will smell like a garden. I have made peace with that trade. The third thing is the trap, and this is the piece most people have never heard of, because there is no company selling it to you. Take a shallow basin, the kind you might use for washing dishes outdoors, and fill it with water mixed with a small amount of dish soap, perhaps 1 teaspoon for every quart, just enough to break the surface tension. Set it in a shaded corner of the yard, away from the porch, and leave it alone. Mosquitoes are drawn to standing water to lay eggs, but the moment they touch that surface, the soap pulls them under and they cannot get back up. You are not killing flying adults. You are turning your own yard's worst habit, the search for still water, into the trap itself. Empty it and refill it every 4 days before any egg inside it has time to hatch. The fourth thing chemists call larviciding, but thirsty is the right word. Because what you are doing is starving the water of anything a larva needs to survive past its first few days. A small amount of a natural bacterial powder, the kind sold for ponds and rain barrels, dropped into water you cannot empty, like a rain barrel you actually use, will not harm fish, will not harm the bees that come to drink at the edge, and will not harm a dog that laps from a puddle. It harms one thing only, and that is the larva itself, in the water, before it ever grows wings. This is the part that matters most if you keep bees, because bees do not drink from a spray cloud drifting over a flower bed. But they absolutely do drink from the edge of a rain barrel on a hot afternoon. And a broad chemical fog settling over that water will hurt them the same as it hurts anything else with a soft body and a short life. A bacterial powder built only to disrupt a mosquito larva's gut does not touch a bee at the rim of that barrel, does not touch the goldfish some people keep in a stock tank, and does not touch a dog that decides the rain barrel looks like a fine place for a drink on a July afternoon. That distinction is the entire reason this method exists in the first place. It was never about avoiding effort. It was about not poisoning the same yard you were trying to make livable. There is a fifth piece, smaller than the rest, and it has to do with the porch itself rather than the yard. A simple fan, even a small one, moving air across where people are sitting, does something a candle never will, because a mosquito is a poor flyer and struggles badly against any real current of air. My mother kept a hand fan by the door for exactly this reason, long before anyone in that house had electricity to run anything larger. Moving air is not a chemical. It does not need to be reapplied every few days. It simply works for as long as it is running, and it costs nothing once you already own it. I did all of these wrong myself before I understood what was wrong. I sprayed the porch railing for 2 summers straight and wondered why it never lasted past Tuesday. Because I was treating the air and ignoring the gutter 6 feet above my head that had not been cleaned since the house was built. I let a rain barrel sit open for an entire June because I thought the screen was optional, and by July, I had created exactly the nursery I was trying to avoid. I planted citronella in the ground instead of in pots, where it spread thin and did almost nothing, instead of concentrated near where people actually sit. And I dumped a bird bath once a week instead of every 3 days, which I now know is exactly long enough for an egg laid on a Monday to hatch by the following Monday. If you are the kind of person who would rather spend 20 minutes a week walking your own yard than $20 a week buying something that only treats the symptom, you already know what to do. Come back next week, because the next thing I am going to walk you through is the exact tea my grandmother brewed from her own garden for anything that bit harder than a mosquito. And that is a different conversation entirely. This is for a yard you own, or a yard you control enough to walk every morning and empty a bucket when you find one. It will not help an apartment balcony 3 floors up, where the standing water belongs to a building you do not manage. It will not help a yard backed up against a marsh that floods every spring regardless of what you do with your own gutters. And it will not work if you do it once in June and then forget about it, because the entire method depends on repetition, the same as brushing your teeth. Anyone who tells you a single application solves a season is selling you something, and I will not do that to you. It also will not save you from a single bad evening when the wind shifts and brings something in from a low field 2 farms over that has nothing to do with your own gutters at all. There are nights even Ruth sat indoors. The difference is that those nights became rare instead of ordinary, and rare is the most honest promise I can make anyone. There is good money in selling a person something they must buy again every single week, forever. There is no money at all in teaching someone to walk their own yard for 20 minutes and never buy the can again. That is the whole difference between an industry and a habit. And once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. This weekend, walk your entire property one time, slowly, looking only for standing water. Write down how many sources you find. Then come back and tell me the number in the comments. I want to know if it is more than 3, because for most people, it is. Type the word pail in the comments if you have ever sat on a porch in July and given up on the evening entirely because of mosquitoes. I want to see how many of us there are. Now, back to that ratio, the one written on the inside cover of a feed catalogue Ruth kept for 41 years. It was simple enough that I was almost embarrassed by how long it took me to find someone willing to say it out loud. 1 part crushed lemon balm leaf, 1 part crushed marigold leaf, rubbed together with a small amount of plain oil, just enough to bind the crushed leaf to skin and clothing for an evening outdoors. Nothing measured in a lab, nothing you can buy in a can, just a ratio one woman taught another, season after season, for longer than I have been alive. And the number from the very beginning, the 23 bites on one arm in a single evening. That was before any of this. That was the summer before my mother taught me to walk the yard with her every morning, before I understood that the porch was never the problem. The yard was the problem, the whole time, and nobody had told me to look at it. Waste nothing, and check your gutters before you check the sky. The people who built this country with their hands knew where the mosquitoes actually came from, long before anyone needed to sell them a reason to forget.